Alrighty, well thank you all everybody for attending this session. And we've got an exciting panel discussion that we want to talk with you all about, which is a relatively obscure topic that not a lot of people are talking about. In fact, I was walking by, I really didn't see anyone talk about it, but it's AI. I don't know if you've heard about it. But in all seriousness, obviously AI has been the talk of the town. And what we're going to do today is take a little bit of a different take on it. So we're going to talk a little bit about what exactly do we mean by AI, but also talk a little bit about how have we actually used it. And you'll hear from folks that are much better at it and more experienced with the actual real world success stories, which is why we got a fantastic panel of folks here. And what we want to accomplish is we're going to talk about what did we actually do? So what are the actual things that we've done? What are the benefits? What are the savings that we have seen? And try to take it a little bit deeper than the hypothetical, here's what you could do, and instead talk a little bit about what we did do and how we are leveraging the Oracle platform to enable a lot of this and to give some tidbits onto how others might be able to get started on this journey. As you can see, got a lot of great folks attending it. Everyone's going to kind of introduce themselves a little bit more organically as we go through this, but just kind of touch on everybody. So Tara, a VP of Internal Audit with Republic Services. We have Lori, another VP Internal Audit with Sunrun. Dave, CISO for Sunrun. And then Robert, an Oracle consulting leader with Risk Management Cloud. So as we go through this, let's set the stage. Again, I'm sure y'all have heard all the definitions of AI and everything, but I want to set the stage a little bit for what exactly are we talking about. So there's a lot of different facets of AI, but the one thing I want you to take away from this slide and from our conversation in general is that AI is more than just a use of a particular technology. When we talk about it, and especially what we're going to hone in on during this session, is we're going to talk about what does AI mean in terms of the processes, in terms of the methodologies and the framework, because that's really what it all encompasses, not just the piece of the technology. And sometimes, as you'll probably hear, the processes and the methodologies are the more difficult aspects than just the technology piece. The way I sometimes like to describe it in a little bit of anecdote for myself, I once in a previous life was a game programmer. So I was a game developer, developed video games, and I actually designed the AI for a lot of game systems. And I used to always tell folks, I can design an AI that is incredibly easy to beat. It's the simplest thing in the world. And it's pretty easy to build. At the same time, I can also build an AI that is incredibly difficult to beat, that it's almost impossible to beat against. Those two scenarios, opposite side of the spectrum, are very easy to develop, but the sweet spot where it's just fun enough to interact with the enemy, but you still have a chance if you deploy correct strategies, that's really where the challenge is. AI is kind of a similar scenario in that there's a lot of technologies, a lot of point solutions you can acquire to solve very specific problems if you know what the specific steps are and what the specific steps to resolve those problems would be. Similar to what we used to do with robotic process automation, RPA. But finding when we start using generative AI, where we may not necessarily know what the specific answers and we need that help filling in the blank, leveraging knowledge systems and everything else, that's where the challenge is. And it's more than just a technology piece. And of course, why are we talking about it and why is everyone talking about it is because of slides like this, right? We've all seen slides like this where we're saying AI is the next gold rush, it's the next thing that's going to solve all of the world's problems, it's Skynet, you pick your analogy, right? But the moral of it is all of our leaders, we recognize that there is a lot of opportunity for AI to fundamentally change the way we do our businesses, the way we run our systems, the way we train our people, the way we do compliance activities, all facets of it. And we've all seen these directives of, we're going to fund, we're going to throw some money at it, we want you to go automate, just go, right? But that's not exactly, it's easier said than done, right? So the first question that we're going to kind of get into is around how do we go about identifying what are we going to automate in the first place? Right? It's one thing to say, yeah, I'm gonna sign up for an AI program. We're gonna set up this infrastructure, and we're just gonna go. But what's that first step? How do you first identify what are those problems? And again, expert field here who have done this, who have gone through it. And so we're gonna start with Lori. Walk us through, what were some of the steps that you at Sunrun and your programs, how did y'all identify, where were those areas for automation?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Hanover. I am the leader of internal audit at Sunrun in San Francisco. We're the country's largest residential solar and storage provider. In my role in internal audit, I look across the organization and manage our SOX, enterprise risk management, and internal audit capability. As part of that work, let me paint a picture for you of our company and what we're going through. We're in the middle of a very complex technology transformation. We're in the midst of moving to Oracle Cloud. We're probably about halfway done with that implementation. And we're also in the midst of modernizing a whole bunch of other technology that we have in our organization. As part of that, though, because we're still in the middle of that enhancement or modernization of our tech stack, we have other areas in our business that are inefficient, where we essentially have stood up business processes with smart people and Google Sheets. So you have inefficiency, areas also where we're not serving our customers as effectively as we could be. And so our company used that as really the trigger to go out and think, how can we use automation to do this? We partnered with a company called Thursday Ventures, who was able to come to us with a series of top-notch AI talent. They came to us and partnered with all of our senior executives and teams to identify which processes are particularly inefficient. Where do we have many people doing a task that isn't being done well, and we think we could do it more cheaply and more efficiently? And so we spun around the organization and we came up with some back office activities, things like contract review, where for SOX purposes, we need a series of attributes to be there so that we have our contract working properly. We used to have a bunch of people who literally had to go from document to document to document to verify each of those attributes. Not a fun job, but it had to be done perfectly. That was one of the first areas that we worked on in order to automate. Beyond that, though, I really want you to understand that we tried to look at this from a strategic perspective. So I'd encourage you to look in your organization. What is your prime directive as a company? Look in those areas. So as an example for Sunrun, we do residential solar. We design solar panels and storage systems to work in your home. So the design of that system is particularly important. It's got to be right, and it's got to be elegant. And so we are in the midst right now with our AI program of looking at that entire design process and using computer vision along with Google Photos in order to enhance the way in which we do the design of your solar system. So this is right in the middle of our strategic imperative. So that's my message to you. Look not only at inefficient back office stuff, but really push the envelope and make this part of your strategic imperative.
And Tara, I know on that last part, particularly in that internal audit space, at Republic's done a lot of work there too.
Yes, so I'm Tara Kolshrud from Republic Services. I've been there for about 20 years. I am the VP of Internal Audit. Republic Services is committed to sustainability. We work with our customers to meet all of their waste and recycling needs. I'm also on an Oracle journey. It started about 4 or 6 years ago. So we are almost in the middle, I would say, but we've gone over a couple humps. So with regards to AI and what we've done in internal audit, so about 5, 6 years ago, we actually had a position open, and we had somebody who wanted to no longer travel for audit and wanted a little bit more of a work-life balance, and was very interested in data analytics. So we got very blessed in giving him that opportunity, and because he had done the processes and he knew those pain points, he came came in and took a report that took everybody an hour and a half to run, to sort, to filter, to get down to the data that you really wanted to audit. And he did that and he automated all of that. And so at the beginning of the month, the auditors came in, their reports were already sorted, filtered, and they could just audit. They didn't have to do all that manual work that nobody wants to do. It's not fun. And that really kind of sparked our conversation and getting people to trust AI and what can we do. And so we set up a bi-monthly meeting in which everybody comes. It needs to be a safe space. We're going to fail. You have to know that that is going to happen. So you want people to throw out ideas and kind of explore those ideas. We also looked at our hotline, aware line activity. Where in the data could we have seen that this was happening, either while it was happening or about to happen? And so we mirrored several of our AI off of those aware line data to make sure that we can kind of spot that in the future. So that's what I would kind of tell you guys, is to look for your pain points, see what you can do to kind of automate that. You got to make sure you have a trust amongst your team so that they're willing to give you those ideas. And then look elsewhere in the business, aware lines, other pain points, what are other people doing to make sure that you can build those. So 5-6 years ago, we started with one report. Now we've got 25% of our audit steps are all using artificial intelligence in order to perform those audit steps.
I need to talk to you after the session.
And obviously, I didn't realize I didn't do an intro at my background is in the compliance space, and I lead our risk and compliance teams, but I started in the security space, and security has always been near and dear, especially cybersecurity. And Dave, I know, speaking as a CISO, the opportunities for AI in the security space, the monitoring, the threat detection, all these things is really pretty exciting. I know you've been working a lot with AI in that space.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm Dave Ruger. I'm the CISO for Sunrun, as Lori introduced earlier. I've also been in charge of the ERP team up until recently, and I have IT, so I have a pretty big charter. But Christian's right. I think the team size that I have is relatively small for the size of the company, and we operate very leanly. As a result of that, we actually can't function without automation. It would be impossible. The amount of data that we have to process. Lori mentioned Google Sheets. They are the bane of my existence, and probably every other CISO, because that's the opportunity for data to leak, to go off the reservation, and ultimately to have stale data that is fed into your business processes. That's the part where I think automation really can help with getting you to a level of understanding. You talked about trust, Tara. If you can't trust your data, you're pretty much sunk from the beginning. So everything is going to flow from that. And using the systems to try to get value out of the data, right? One of the things that Lori and I have been working on is kind of the user access reviews for SOX controls. Highly, highly manual. Almost every company has it, right? When you think about the opportunity to do less, to grind less by using automation, it opens up real value for your workforce, right? Instead of looking at a spreadsheet and sending out emails and getting that iterative process of making sure everyone is doing what they need to do on time for your quarterly reporting, the machines can take care of that. Now you can focus on the real thing, which is, do I actually have the right people in the right roles? And are they doing the function that they were hired to do? The one area that I think is really problematic for all security professionals is not the onboarding process or the offboarding process. It's the change from one role to another. No company does it well, and automation is the only way you're really going to be able to flag that stuff in real time so that your permissions get dropped, they get re-added. That's something you want a machine to do. You don't want people to do that because they'll go out of their minds. But in general, I think the overall data problem is where we have to create visibility. So logging, looking at signals of where people are doing things they're maybe not supposed to, or potentially where you see activity that looks somewhat abnormal. That's really where automation can help you kind of fine-tune the data to get the right insights for that type of an alert trigger.
And we've talked about trust a few times, and I want to ask you all a question about that. But Robert, real quick, I know You've got some exciting stuff to talk about a little bit later, specifically around the Oracle and the technology and everything else. But kind of what have you seen either from your customer's perspective or from even internally to Oracle in this identification of AI ops?
Yeah, so real brief, Robert Singleton. I've been with Oracle for 10 years, focused only on their risk management products. Prior to that, I led internal audit organizations where I implemented risk management way back when for on-prem in 2004. So I've been around the product for an extended period of time. When I think about working with customers now about opportunities to automate, there's three main areas that I have customers focus on or start looking at. One we've already hit on is access reviews. How are you monitoring access? How can you take out all those reports that you have historically had to run and automate those activities? Two is how can you start doing automated auditing activities? So when things are changing, key configurations, metadata, how can you be notified of that change as quickly as possible, but then leverage that for transaction analysis activities? So earlier today I was talking about a customer, their three-way match tolerances changed. They had to go do a homework assignment and pull all transactions that got processed into that during that time period. So being able to automate that entire review process. And so that's what I help customers do from a Oracle risk management standpoint. It's really focused on those three areas, but that's what I started doing back in 2004 when I worked at Intuit and I did all the on-prem activity, on-prem GRC activities. Those were the three main areas that I went after first. I'm gonna say, and the biggest one that we automated, I started at Intuit 2 days after they went live with EBS on-prem 10. I don't know, is 20 years ago. They didn't modify any security. Everyone had access to everything. First year SOX compliance. What did we automate? Transaction monitoring. I had every SOD possible in the organization mitigated with automatic transaction monitoring. So I didn't care about any of the SODs in my organization because I was looking at every transaction those users were doing, and if it was violating an SOD conflict, it was routing to the appropriate party to review and approve. So that's what the automation really starts you to go after, is being able to automate those manual activities historically you've done, but put it all in the system, and the review and documentation of it all in the system as well.
Yeah, and the transactional monitoring of RMC Risk Management Cloud has always been one of the most phenomenal aspects of the suite and an incredible addition to it. And we're going to dive into that a little bit. But one thing I want to touch on, and it kind of goes to our next question, is we keep mentioning trust. At KPMG, we obviously have a pretty strong opinion and a methodology is built around building what we call trusted AI. But what that essentially means is, with all these phenomenal use cases that the teams just walked through, we have to make sure that we have controls and we have compliance and we have trust that the generative part of these AIs, or even the fully automated aspects, whether it be through RMC or through RPA or any other mechanisms, how do we get external auditors comfortable? How do we get our C-suites comfortable? How do we get the street comfortable that these outputs are, in usually our traditional terms, complete and accurate? We have the controls, we have the comfort that all of the information and all of the automation that it's handling is being handled correctly. And so I'm not going to drain everything on how we particularly solve it. I'm going to go back to the experts here and simply ask y'all, right? So Dave, I'll probably start with you. From your perspective, I know building trust from a cyber and a security perspective is definitely top of mind for that. So what were some of the strategies that you did for either your customers or from your C-suites or whoever it might be to say, yeah, this is what we have, but this is how we know that this is a controlled automation and it's trusted?
Well, I mean, as a security professional, I have to start from the standpoint of I don't trust anybody. Full stop. I won't trust people. I won't trust machines. And certainly AI with deepfake technology is something that absolutely should be looked at with a high degree of scrutiny, right? For us, we had to start from a perspective of ChatGPT had just launched. Everyone is excited about using it, and we found within probably the first 2-3 months, we had over 1,000 people hitting up on it regularly. So that started us on a path of trying to understand, well, first of all, how is it being used? And to the whole concept of trust. If people are just putting whatever they want into the chat prompts, you're creating a very bad situation where you could lose a lot of your intellectual property and your own corporate data, which would give you competitive advantage. So we took a look at kind of how it was being used and then said we probably want to have a policy here so that we can give people adequate guardrails of how to use it. We didn't want to say no, because obviously that would put us at a disadvantage compared with other companies that were leveraging AI. So we wanted to really say what was a responsible usage of it? What could you put into the model that would be okay? And what would really constitute risky behavior? End of the day, that's what we have to do as security professionals, is look at the risk profile. Businesses need to take risks, but they have to have a certain tolerance for that threshold of risk. If you don't know what that is from the beginning, your user base will figure it out quite quickly, and then you'll be reacting after the fact. So the team looked at how we were doing it from a development standpoint. As Lori mentioned, we had a dedicated team doing AI development, automation development throughout the organization, but they were largely operating under their own silo. So we had to break down those barriers initially, work with them, see what they were trying to do, and it kind of pulled everything back into, you know, that security oversight. Like, we have to have reviews of code, what you're doing at the design level, and that was everything, not just areas that were more dictated by applications for the sales teams, but even within the ERP and our CRM and all of our data platforms, looking at how is data being accessed. End of the day, this is still just a data problem. You add AI to it, and now it becomes an even bigger problem if the model itself is flawed, right? So these are the areas where I think it's very challenging for security teams right now, especially when you think about business email compromise. You might get an email and it looks like it's absolutely coming from the person that it came from, but you wouldn't know because you'd have to look very deep into headers to understand, actually, this was generated. Someone just did a ChatGPT prompt and mimicked how someone does their own email style. So it's a challenging time, but it's also exciting because we can also turn the AI against the AI. And now we have models that are being trained upon malicious behavior, which helps to reduce a lot of that manual grind that we have on the security side.
I know one of the questions that we get asked a lot, and I want to address this to Lori and Tara, because y'all, in addition to y'all are going through a common Oracle transformation, you also have the same external auditor as well. And one thing we field a lot is how we want to do all this automation, but how do we make sure our external auditors are comfortable with the activities that we're working on? So how did y'all approach that?
It took a little bit of time. So I think the external auditors are learning and grilling into what is their methodology for assurance over AI models. But I think it goes back to the point you made, Christian, on what is AI. There might be some components in an architecture that truly are generative AI using ChatGPT. In our case, for SOX controls that we have in scope that have been reviewed by our external auditor, if we look under the covers at the architecture, we can see that yes, there is a Gen AI component, but there's also, like Dave was saying, typical code, Python scripts, other databases, et cetera. So the typical controls that we would expect, we would want to make sure that those are in place. And so that really helped to sort of open the cupboard there and make sure that our external auditor understood the full architecture. Ultimately, what we ended up doing with SOX controls that include AI is that we have some form of a review component on top of it. In other words, the AI does the activity like contract review for us. We then come up with a human review activity on a sample basis just to verify that nothing has gone wrong with the AI. So that's the way we've been able to get them comfortable. And I'm wondering, Tara, have you had a similar experience?
Yeah, we do. We have one of them very similar where we will sample quarterly to make sure that the AI is continuing to work. We also then look at an analytic overall revenue per unit just to make sure that, again, it hasn't hallucinated and done something that we didn't expect it to do. From AI just in general, I think of it actually just like I would any other application. So you want to make sure that you have your access, change management, and operations. If you have those three legs of the stool, you'll get your external auditors there. So who's got access to the AI, who's got access to the script, who has access to the data that goes into that script. When we think about change management, how do we track whether or not that analytic has changed, who's changed it, is there a change log, can we test those changes? And then operations, right, does it run automatically, or is it something that if it failed and you could just run ad hoc, is that really a key job then? So if you've got that access, change management, and operations, you'll get your external auditors there.
Or don't, and then you'll figure it out on the fly.
There's a story there. I think going back to this whole idea of siloed activity, there can be a tendency when you have lack of a complete umbrella over your AI activity. There can be this sort of newbie excitement of the AI team to run forward into the entire tech stack. And my recommendation would be, like Dave is saying, be careful to protect your business as usual systems. You've got to be certain that at the same time we're building cool new AI stuff, we're not accidentally doing something naughty that has a negative impact on our Oracle environment or our other key information systems.
Yeah, and I think the key there is that you're talking machine speed. So at scale, this can do a lot of damage. And if you do find out about it later, the amount of additional cost that you're going to incur, both in people time, potential fines, everything that's related to the post activity, becomes extremely expensive. So, I'm a big fan of trust but verify. Lori and Tara have already said, this is the way we have to do it. You really need to have some eyeballs on this, at least for a period of time before you can get to a level of comfort that you're not introducing more risk into your business.
And I think that's a good segue into the kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about. And Robert, this is definitely one I want to get your insights as well. Another thing that y'all share is that you're going through an Oracle transformation, enabling Oracle to empower a lot of your business processes. You're all using Risk Management Cloud as a means to automate a lot of the activities there. And what I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about is how has two parts to it, right? How has the power of the Oracle technology and the Oracle stack, and even a lot of the great things that we've been hearing about this week, enabled y'all to accomplish your automation objectives, but also how has the act of just doing a transformation in general been a catalyst for, hey, our leaders are in the mindset to change the way we do the things that we do. How am I going to use this as a catalyst to enact changes from an automation perspective? And Robert, I want to start with you because I know Risk Management Cloud, anytime we talk from a compliance perspective, from a risk perspective, what are ways that we can do it? Just like you mentioned, back in the EBS days, we had transactional monitoring. Obviously, we still have it now. That's a perfect opportunity to automate. But what are you kind of seeing a lot of, and how is Risk Management Cloud playing a role in that?
Yeah, so when you think about risk management, it's all about identifying those efficiencies for time-saving activities. And so as we continually evolve that and think about how we're going to leverage AI within the product, some of those areas where we're actually starting to introduce the concepts more are in addition to that automation. So what I can share with you today is one of those that AI agents that we will be releasing within risk management is generation of security role descriptions. Everyone knows probably on this panel, you have to type those out today. And if you copy an Oracle provided security role, you have to update it. Well, one thing we've realized is as organizations are starting to review who has what access through your quarterly access certifications, no one understands what the role does. So one of our new AI agents is going to be auto generation of role descriptions based off of those privileges that you have within the system. So now individuals, as they're completing their access certifications, they can click on a button and actually see what the role does and get an understanding of what that role has that aid in that review process. The other areas, as Steve was talking in his earlier session today, from a keynote perspective, is all the AI that we're going to be releasing in risk management is all about, I'm going to say, proposing recommendations to you as an end user to take action. And so I don't even think anybody on this panel realizes some of the features that we're announcing is, one is when you have an access issue or an SOD issue, there's multiple ways to fix that. So another AI agents we're releasing is proposals on how to resolve that SOD conflict. So instead of you trying to guesstimate, do I need to take this job role away? Do I need to remove this privilege from this duty role? It's going to be proposed as here's options that you can take. Now everything we're doing is going to allow you as an organization to decide what option you take. So we're not going to automatically do that option. We're going to propose a recommendation to you. Same thing with transaction monitoring activities, is as they come through leveraging AI, is it an appropriate transaction? Is it potential fraud? There's going to be recommendations made into the action the organization can be taken. And so that's where we're going from, incorporating AI into the risk management features. It's all about increasing those efficiencies, but doing it in a way where trust but verify really comes into play. Is we're going to put the recommendation there, but then we still want you as an organization to verify how you want to resolve it.
That UAR piece with the role descriptions, and I'm looking forward to connecting with your teams because Tara we deployed and we've been working with y'all to develop the security and controls as part of y'all's transformation. We have our own methodologies for building those controls. But how many sessions were we in with the business and we're presenting the personas, we're presenting the job roles, and saying, well, this is all the entitlements, this is what they're going to be able to do. It was like, well, I just need a short description for the UAR. Now we're going to have a solution to be able to automatically populate those based on the underlying entitlements. That's really pretty exciting.
Well, I think what would be really helpful is the permission bloat that we've experienced, right? So when I started, I've been with Sunrun for a couple of years. One of the activities that one of my team members did was literally looking at the roles to permission set mapping. We had over 20,000 for one of our systems, which is just completely untenable. And then when you start looking at what those permissions were, there was a lot of duplication. So Sunrun grew very organically. As you can imagine, high growth market, everything is just being built on top of sandcastles. So it's a lot of tech debt that just keeps getting perpetuated. Out of those 20,000 permission sets, largely 80% were duplicative, right? So that's a clear opportunity for AI to go in and start looking at, are these even being used anymore? If not, prune them out. That's great. That reduces your risk profile. For the ones that are being used, you can map them directly back to job profiles and job descriptions or even job codes, which is what we have at Sunrun. And then you start to see another level of duplication, which is happening at job profile descriptions from your Workday system layer, your HRIS layer. So those are all opportunities when you start thinking about how to do more efficient user access reviews. Is like start with your permissions, and then you have the ability to kind of go macro level as you figure out what is really accessible for certain pieces of data or objects.
Yeah, Tara, I know that we've gone through several waves across a few different logos, but of doing the controls transformation work, and we're a big proponent of making sure that controls are embedded as part of this. Yep. Kind of going back to one of the other parts of this question, what are some of the fact that we're going through a transformation in general, has there been any kind of enabling factors for this overall automation journey?
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time actually to be building out a new general ledger or some sort of system and going with Oracle, because AI data, it's top of mind. It's the buzzword of the day. And so as we were building our general ledger, we had that end in mind. And we're currently building order to cash, and we have that in mind. We know that when we get to the end, we're going to want to take that data and we're going to want to slice it and dice it and do a bunch of stuff with it. And so as we were building both our general ledger and order to cash, we've got that in mind. And so we're building out that structure so you can get that data. 20 years ago when we built the general ledger, we just threw everything into an account. And then someone had to go and look at it afterwards. And now we've built it out so cash goes into one account, accruals go into another, so you can slice and dice that versus having to manually look through that. Very excited about job descriptions, because I think we just had, or not job descriptions, role descriptions, just a new kind of announcement from our external auditors that they want to actually go in and ask the control owners who are doing user access reviews and saying, how do you know what that job does? How do you know what that role does? And so if you've got that little icon to click right there, they can say, that's why I know it's appropriate for this person, because I've got that information right at my fingertips. So, yeah.
One comment for all of you who are in the middle of your journey. Some of you might be in the midst of implementing Oracle Cloud. We're in the middle. We've got multiple modules already implemented. We decided to work with Christian and his team on helping us build out and use RMC effectively. I think we would have found our way without the KPMG team, but it's been a really, an on-ramp for us to quickly have that degree of knowledge and detailed acumen as part of our implementation. That way, we're building in proper controls and security using RMC from the get-go.
Well, I appreciate that, and your check's in the mail. I'll make sure you get it. So, and how are we doing on time? I realize I don't really even have a timer on it, but we're going to keep on going. So we are going to have like a little Q&A session if y'all have any questions at the end. But on this, obviously, yes, we've had an amazing opportunity to work with y'all, with all of y'all here on y'all's transformation. But one thing I want to make sure we address is, how do we get started with AI, right? We've talked through a lot of phenomenal success stories. We've got some amazing new technology enablers that are coming available, and many more that have already been available to us. I can understand from folks in the audience, and for me as well, when we go to a brand new organization, it's sometimes difficult to understand where exactly do we get started, right? I haven't talked much about what we've been doing internally at KPMG, but one of the initiatives I lead is the development of tech and innovation for how we solve our own internal processes and how do we enable our services through AI. And when we started the year, we kind of took a different approach. We didn't necessarily look at all the tools and technologies on the market and then take those and then go searching for problems. We kind of started with, well, let's document what are our top 10 problems that we see, right? So we did process taxonomies. We said, all right, when we go do SOX work, 35% of our time is being spent in test of design. So let's double click on that and figure out, all right, where exactly is the time sink? And for us personally, what we found, it was not in the areas that we thought it would be. It's more in the communication back and forth with our clients, the gathering of all the data, the storing it in a Workiva or an Audible or a Diligent. Then we can start the test of effectiveness, right? So we thought, okay, we'll just automate that piece. But it was actually the data acquisition and storage and everything else, which ended up being the most ineffective piece. So my reason for saying that is it's often times where the biggest automation opportunities are in the least obvious places. So I'm curious, so one of the last questions we'll address today before we open it up to the audience is, if for y'all starting, having gone through your own journey, and folks maybe going and starting theirs, what are either some lessons learned or what would you recommend as the starting point for just getting started? Because we all know just step one of any goal is usually the hardest one.
So I'll start. So how we got started was we had kind of one thing, right? And so what I would recommend is maybe not to think of like AI and how is it going to completely transform my job or my department, but maybe just more in, what's a little thing that we could change? Because that might spark interest in everybody else. And you want to get your teams interested and trusted in AI. They need to be engaged in it and be offering up those solutions, because to Christian's point, you may not know exactly where it is that you can gain the most efficiencies. And so you need to have that safe spot where they can throw out those ideas, know that it's okay if the idea is bad or if it fails, because you will come up with an AI that's probably not going to work, and that's perfectly okay. So my suggestion is to actually not necessarily think of that big, huge transformation. You'll get there. Maybe think of some smaller things. Get your teams trusted and interested in AI so that they start giving out those ideas of what you can do, and it will snowball from there.
That's a great point, and we often use the term kind of either low-hanging fruit or quick wins, right, for those type of deals. But I want to emphasize something you said, that it doesn't have to necessarily be a quick win. A win could be we tried something and it didn't work, but as long as we learned something from it, then it's always a win, right? And you're exactly right that sometimes we learn the most by failing at something. And so, yeah.
Well, I would advocate you're already on the journey. You just probably don't know it. A lot of tools that you're using already have AI and machine learning baked into them. I love the kind of baselining your roadmap, which is looking for opportunities where you could do more efficient behaviors, business process transformation, all of that can really benefit by the use of AI. Having a good policy helps you to put those guidelines and guardrails in place so that you don't do something, potentially risky. Again, if you're using public models, anything you put in your prompt is going to go in the public model, so you have to be really careful with that. But having the ability to really take a look at your business fundamentally, like what are the areas that could really benefit? What are the areas that could not benefit? That's the other thing too. It's like AI is not a panacea. You can't just apply it everywhere and expect to get great results. You really have to be thoughtful about it. Otherwise, it'll be just like any other business process. It'll get unwieldy over time, and then you'll have to go back and re-engineer, and that becomes costly.
Christian, I'm going to add one thing is everybody on this stage, and probably a large majority of you, are going through a journey. So when I get asked this question, I always tell all my customers, how can you protect the money that you just spent with KPMG to get live, to get through your implementation? And that's an area where you can start looking for your AI journey. So I've had customers that have gone through an implementation, they said bye-bye to their SI, and within 6 weeks, their security was out of whack because now they're managing it. And luckily, we got them to get risk management. They got set up, and they got everything cleaned within an 8-week period. But everything that they did during their implementation was lost from a security standpoint. So I would challenge everybody as you're going through your journey is what can you do as that SI is rolling off to protect that investment? And that's also an area to start looking at for your journey into AI is what can you leverage to protect what you just spent?
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully all of y'all have very good security and controls processes already in place. But if you don't, we'll certainly can talk about that. But exactly right. I mean, y'all have made an investment of money, investment of time. If you're on the Oracle product, you have solutions like Risk Management Cloud available to you to already start automating and protecting all of those investments. A few minutes later, Lori, anything that you wanted to add to that?
I talked earlier about making sure you have clearly defined roles and responsibilities. Dave mentioned the idea of a governance document that helps us determine what are the behaviors that we want to allow for use of AI. If you have a separate AI team, be careful to make sure they're part of the family with respect to corporate security expectations. Make sure that you protect your existing investment in your Oracle transformation and make sure that you don't have any unforeseen consequences from all the cool new stuff that you're doing. I think one final thing we haven't talked about that's been really effective for us, we've measured as a company the actual impact of each AI that we've done. So we have set a very, very, very high strategic goal that expects X amount of revenue or productivity to be obtained from each AI we do. And so we track that extensively between internal audit and our CFO org. So highly recommend that.
Well, I said we'd open it up for Q&A, but we're getting the proverbial hook, as it were. So we'll stick around and answer some more questions.
We've got 2 minutes if anybody has any questions.
Questions or anything? Well, I'll take the last couple of minutes just to thank everybody. Thank you all for attending this. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you all. Robert, working with you and the Oracle team as well. As especially echoing the last, if you're on an innovation AI journey, it's important to make sure all of your key stakeholders are involved in it and make sure you have the correct stakeholders involved in it. And the stakeholders that should be involved in it are the staff or the folks who are doing the day-to-day activities, not just necessarily the leaders involved. But again, thank you all for attending. Thank you, panelists, for attending.
Thanks,
this as well.
Christian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.